Sekeres Price for Monday, May 13th, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center downtown Vancouver. And if you have any reason to be in downtown Vancouver, a game, an event, what have you, make it a staycation. Call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres Price rate. Some blackout dates apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, great asset and switches, conducting things, fixing cameras, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, on the fly.
Along with Sean Chessman. And you'll have to forgive Grady that we're a little bit late on the live stream. He's had plenty going on. You know, there was a video with Undertaker and Paul Bearer that absolutely had to be made.
A lot of editing.
So they're conducting things, and this show is a presentation of Applewood Auto Group.
This show, not that video. No. We should separate church
God,
and state here.
That was from his personal account, and we cannot be held responsible.
This show is, though. Applewood Nissan at the Richmond Auto Mall has so many fabulous vehicles and a great staff to help you pick the right one. Take one for a test drive, like the 2024 Nissan Leaf, pioneer the electric field, $83 weekly with a rebate of $5,000 plus $4,000 equals a $9,000 rebate. And that's all with just $39.99 down. Check it out. Applewood Nissan at the Richmond Auto Mall. It's all good at Applewood.
Our poll question today. Should Connor McDavid be suspended for his two-hander on Carson Soucy? You can vote yes. Does Connor McDavid deserve supplemental discipline for his two-handed slash on Carson Soucy? Yes, fine. Yes, suspension. No, you can vote at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube.
Brought up because the two Canucks involved in that fracas, they were hauled before the court.
One's already been fined. Nikita Zadorov.
Soucy's suspension will be decided this afternoon. But nothing for Connor McDavid after his slash on Soucy.
No. The instigator in all this.
Right. He doesn't do that. None of the rest of the stuff happens.
If you don't take a two-hander to a player post-horn, and of course, as we know, they don't like post-horn stuff.
Right. And I'm not suggesting that Connor McDavid's supplemental discipline should be equal to Soucy's.
Nope. Nor am I.
Not at all. I think it would be akin to what Zadorov got.
So my position on this, if Soucy gets suspended, then McDavid should be suspended. If Soucy gets fined, then McDavid should be fined. Perhaps fewer games, perhaps a lesser amount. Once to the head, once to the.
If Zadorov just got a fine, I'm fine with a fine. Fine with a fine.
But the reason, and look, he instigated it. That game goes quietly into the night, and Soucy does push him a little bit right at the horn. But I mean, pushes happen all the time in hockey. No, but if the two-hander doesn't come out, that game goes quietly into the night. And on the YouTube side, you'll see the video here, and this is courtesy of Sportsnet.
And one thing doesn't get talked about, Hyman is the last guy in, and he's cross-checking Zadorov. Watch here right at the end. 1, 2, 3, right there. Stick into the face of Zadorov. No mention of Hyman.
Well, the other thing is I believe Soucy is intending to cross-check him in the chest, and it just so happens he gets pushed at the final moment by Nikita Zadorov. Head goes forward, the stick winds up making contact with Connor McDavid's face. But I don't believe the intent was to hit him in the head. And some of this amounts to fuck around and find out, Connor McDavid. You're going to want to go take a two-hander to a guy that size? Okay.
Yep.
There are repercussions for being the instigator.
And I don't think Jeff Merrick, and courtesy of Sportsnet again, by the way, that video again, I don't think Jeff Merrick was trying to poke the Canucks here, but he made some reference to remembering a day when the captain of the Oilers getting cross-checked like that would have incited something huge. But the captain of the Oilers back then, 99, would not have two-handed Scott Stevens.
No.
Like, he wouldn't have done that. So,
of course, he had Semenko.
Yes.
Who's still lionized in Edmonton.
So it was a pretty brave move by McDavid, who's getting away with murder in this series. Literally sliced up the face of the Canucks captain with not even a penalty called.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough to feel a ton of empathy here. And not again, Susie will get suspended, and I think justifiably so. You have to be in control of your temper, of your stick, all of that. But there is an element of consequences and with fire here.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you should get cross-checked. But you got a can of gases and matches around. The likelihood of something happening is probably going to happen.
And the whining from Edmonton media hit a crescendo this morning. And I've always liked Terry Jones. We've always gotten along personally. I've quite enjoyed reading his column over the years. He is very much, he is amongst the best that I have ever read in terms of knowing his audience and writing to it. But this tweet this morning, decided to wait until morning to see if I felt the same way. I do. Irma's, Carson Susie is from Irma, Alberta, should be suspended for the rest of the playoffs for the post-game cross-check to the face of Connor McDavid. Defining decision for Department of Player Safety involves greatest player in the game. Connor McDavid's stake as the greatest player in the game right now, and there's no doubt about that. May not win the MVP this year, but year to year is the best player in the game. Should have absolutely no bearing on the length of this suspension. Nor do I think it's anywhere close to a defining moment for the Department of Player Safety. Frankly, I think it's small potatoes compared to what they usually deal with.
There's no precedent for something even close to that sort of punishment, particularly for a play that doesn't result in any consequential injury. Is Connor McDavid sore this morning? Is jaw sore? Probably. Neck sore? Probably. He's going to play in Game 4. I'll bet dollars to donuts on that. Saw a reference to, Mason Raymond, who was it? Boychuk didn't get penalized, and I'm not litigating old wounds here, but my point is Mason Raymond's life changed when Johnny Boychuk checked him. He still flies in from Calgary to Vancouver to get treatment across the street from our studios here regularly. That was an unpenalized play. Connor McDavid's playing in 30 hours. You don't get suspended for the duration of a playoff run for an infraction in which there's no injury.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah. All right. Moving right along to our top story, brought to you by Mr. Lube. Canucks cause chaos. Come away with a victory in Game 3. Lead this best of 7 series 2-1 with Game 4 going Tuesday in the Alberta capital. It was chock full of many things: physicality, power play goals, incidents, goaltending matters. Ooh. I mean, this is a full pull Stanley Cup playoff series, and we're only 3 games in, Blake.
It has the heat of a cup
it's
final.
Got some juice.
This is. I mean, Matt, this is not too dissimilar from the storylines and vitriol of the Stanley Cup final of 2011. It's
honestly, the feeling, now that you mention it, the feeling is washing over me. I'm remembering 2011 and what it was like to cover that series. It's spicy. It's poignant.
I remember having this epiphany one day. And me and Kessler back then did not get along very well. But
now you're like bosom buddies. It's
Damian Cox was taking a run at Ryan Kessler.
Right.
And I couldn't believe, I was like, I know that, but you don't get to say that. They were sort of,
he may be an asshole, but he's our asshole.
Well, it was just, because out of town media come to the Stanley Cup final gets just a peripheral skiff of what that team's about. And they make these grand proclamations about the team. And we've been watching this team for 100 games this season. And now you're going to tell me after watching 4 of them that they're this, that they are X, they are Y. No. So, that's sort of, you don't know this team like we know this team is coming up a little bit from fans and media. The players are clearly into it. Everything's happening.
You don't know this franchise like we know this franchise.
Yeah.
And thus somehow put together the words institutional surrender.
That's right.
Tell them about Mr. Lube.
Need a tire change or tire service? Mr. Lube provides no appointment tire sales and service. Drop by anytime for rotation, repair, balancing, servicing all makes and models, including electric vehicles. 16 locations. Go to mrlube.com.
Do you want to do institutional surrender here, or do you want to do the game?
Let's do the game first. That's the most consequential here.
Right. So let's hear from Elias Lindholm of the Vancouver Canucks. And one of the things that an emerging storyline, if it's not yet emerged in this series, is that the Vancouver Canucks this season went out and made a couple of significant, consequential trade additions. Nikita Zadorov early in the season and Elias Lindholm just past the new year. Both of them, of course, from the Calgary Flames, both of them on the losing end of the Battle of Alberta a couple of years ago. The Edmonton Oilers waited to make their deadline additions closer to the early March trade deadline. Adam Henrique continues to be injured and is not has not appeared in this series.
Now, he played one game. Did he not? He played game 2, didn't he? I believe he did. I think he came back up.
Okay.
Put me on E's and O's if I'm wrong on that.
And Sam Carrick and Troy Stetcher, Troy from Richmond, of course, are not being used via coach's decision.
Yeah.
And how about that first shift from Elias Lindholm and Dakota Joshua? They hit everything that moved and set
Bash
the
Brothers.
tone. Yeah, exactly. I mean, who would have thought Elias Lindholm, Bash Brother? Who would have thought that it would be those two guys leading Lindholm in particular, leading the physicality and setting the tone for game 3. Here's the Canucks centerman.
Yeah, I thought our first shift was a good first shift. Obviously, had a shot on net and a couple hits and kind of set the tone. So it's it was fun.
And yes, Henrique did play in the overtime victory on Friday,
but clearly not good to go now.
No. Canucks fans were asking for this after game 2, particularly with Leon Draisaitl and his lower back injury. Didn't feel that the Canucks were physical enough in the game. Specifically didn't feel they were physical enough with Leon Draisaitl. Well, they were indiscriminate in terms of who they hit in game 3. And look,
50 to 30 they hit.
That's it, to 50. That is a very big number, 50.
And if this were a video game, I would say Zadorov putting Kane on the floor of his own bench and stuffing him in, that should be worth an extra 10.
Because Evander Kane, not a small man.
No.
Picked up and ragdolled.
And I'll go to my grave thinking that Evander Kane intentionally swung his skate at Zadorov's head while doing so, by the way.
Well, Zadorov takes a punch from Warren Fogle on the bench.
Yeah. So, I mean,
supplemental discipline coming there?
No, nothing to see there.
Just checking.
Nothing to see.
The other storyline that is emerging or has emerged is that Brock Besser has got his mojo back. As we know about the Canucks winger, he can get very hot. 4 goals against the Oilers in the season opener this year. He can go through stretches where he's kind of quiet. Well, right now he's on a heater. He seems to be feeling it, getting to the right spots, reading the play well, and then when he gets the puck on his stick, not making many mistakes. Here's Besser on the confidence he's got right now as a shooter.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident, but I think it just comes with trying to play the right way and really just focusing on the little details in our structure. And, I'm just trying to do anything I can to help our team win, and it's always nice when the goals go in.
And I got to say, Blake, that if you had told me prior to the season, well, obviously a lot of things changed for Brock Besser this season. He reverted back into the, top 6 first-line goal scorer that we thought him to be earlier in his Vancouver Canucks career before he went through some struggles. But, despite the fact that he's a pretty heady player, it's pretty good hockey IQ there on Besser. I mean, his pace is clearly not a strength. And if you had told me before the season, the Canucks are going to be in a playoff series against the Oilers where their preferred matchup line is JT Miller, Brock Besser, and Pius Suter, I would have said, yikes. That is probably not good for the Canucks. They've done a marvelous job. McDavid held without a shot on goal for the first time in his postseason career in game 1. And Blake, he does not have a shot. He's held off the score sheet
No points, yeah.
No points in game 3. I mean, this after running roughshod over Vancouver in game 2 with a 4-point evening, but one game with no shots, one game with no points. You absolutely will take that if you're Rick Tocchet and the coaching staff.
What I love about Besser in particular is in the wake of his skating, and he's not actually getting slower, but the league's getting faster. So it appears like he's getting slower to some degree almost every year. To compensate for that, you need to be a shootsy scorer and not exclusively. Like you want him to do the stuff in front and tips and all that sort of stuff as well. Jam it in like he did to win the game versus the Preds. But he, in addition to all that, his bread and butter needs to be shoots and scoring. And I began to wonder if he was capable of shoots and scoring again. Via injury, I guess. Remember when he arrived, we saw that shot and we went, oh my God, the Canucks have got a goal scorer here. And years went by and I thought that diminished a little bit. Man, 2 of those goals, he only got 2 in the end, but those 2 that he gets credited with, staring down, and I know it's only Stuart Skinner.
We're going to get to poor Stuart here.
But he just flat out beats the goaltender both times. And that is a nice player to have in your quiver. Nice attacking element of he's going to stare you down. He's going to beat you 1v1.
Yeah.
And he did that.
So many of his goals this year were in front of the net, getting those greasy areas, those tips.
And those are good too.
That allowed him to become the 40-goal guy that some people thought he could become when he was drafted, right? So he's really rounded out his goal scoring.
But see, and I would argue it was all there when he was a rookie. When he was a rookie, and remember how much we focused on him, Blake, because of course he was the first one to come. There was no Patterson, there were no Hughes, there was not a lot to focus on.
It was Mordor, and there was a beam of light
coming down. And its name was Brock Besser.
Yes.
He even had the White Knight look to him.
Mm-hmm.
Still does.
Well, having Henrik Sedin put it right onto your tape on the power play didn't hurt either.
But what we found out about Brock was he had a really good shot and release and accuracy and got to those areas where he scored those mid-distance goals, but also was really nifty around the goal mouth as well. So, yeah, I mean, this is the Besser that we all hoped he would turn into because he had the great promise. And of course, there's a heck of a lot of sympathy for Brock and the Besser family after what their patriarch Duke fought and of course lost him. And Besser on Mother's Day, I wish he had gotten the Hattie. I mean, what a story there, but nevertheless, a two goal performance, 2 goals for Lindholm as well, and the Canucks will take it. The other thing that we should mention in regards to McDavid being held pointless is Rick Tocchet acknowledged in the post game that they went about doing things a little bit differently than when McDavid and Draisaitl ran roughshod over the Canucks Friday in game 2. Here's Coach Tocchet on the adjustments that were made defending McDavid.
I thought the coaches did a great job yesterday and today, putting some great video today. Our staff did a hell of a job of a couple of tweaks in there, and I think it helped us tonight. So I got to give my assistant coaches a shout out. They were great. They did a hell of a job last couple of days.
Yeah, good adjustments.
Mike Yeo and Adam Foote are good coaches. I think that's one of the things we've learned this year alongside that Tocchet has had a great year and could very well be a great head coach.
This is part of the beauty that we talked about Canucks fans missing out on with the lack of playoffs is adjustments game to game in the playoffs. And even after a win, and Tocchet's been loath to change this lineup, but he makes a change. Höglander out, Carlson in, and Carlson getting put on Patterson's line for that matter. But you're constantly tweaking, even in the wake of a win, because the other coach is tweaking too. And so you have to try to keep up with the Joneses, stay ahead of the game. What are they going to do? How do we counter what they're planning on doing? It's fascinating. And the coaching staff's been hitting all the right buttons.
And just let me, before anyone says, hey, what about it's not limited to Foote and Yeo? It's, of course, Ian Clark, the Canucks director of goaltending. And my God, he's worth his weight in gold when you look at what's going on with Arturs Silovs and the goaltending situation, Sergei Gonchar, and then the video guys, Dylan Crawford and Greg Hood. So congratulations and tap to all the Canucks coaches.
Mm-hmm.
They had a marvelous year taking a team that was desperately out of the playoffs last year to the Pacific Division title. Now you're in round 2 and you're leading one of the Stanley Cup choices, right? Preseason and pre-playoffs, 2-1 with a to go up 3-1 on Tuesday night at Rogers Place. Okay. Institutional surrender. And, it was an amusing call. I do wonder if there was discussion about the officiating in the Rogers Place press box last night.
Well, that's the thing. Fate just came back and bit not only Mark Spector, but anybody who read that and said, hell yeah, just bit all of them in the ass here, because everything that they criticize the Vancouver fans, players, and media for is happening now to them. And that's why you should just stick to the facts. And you know what? If there's bad officiating, you can say it's just bad officiating, one way and the other. It's not whining if it's true. And now you're realizing, and the collective you in Edmonton, fans and media, realize it can be true for you too, because it was a consequential ticky-tack penalty on, who was it, Nurse?
Yes.
That immediately turns into a power play goal for the Vancouver Canucks. How'd that feel?
Bad call.
Not too good. Call. Not too good. Mm-hmm. Poor officiating.
Yeah.
It happened to you.
Again, I'm still not clear on the rule, but if the goaltender is also allowed to be assessed a holding the stick penalty, then Silovs deserved one against Derek Ryan in that goal mouth. If the puck being in the crease negates that penalty, then so be it. I'm still unclear.
I don't see how that would
work. But there were calls that went against the Edmonton Oilers in Game 3, much like there were calls that went against the Vancouver Canucks in Game 2.
All we're asking for is transparency and accountability, which is why Boston Bruins general manager Don Sweeney going out of his way to now say, put them in front of the mics. Put at least the supervisor, if not the officials, in front of the mics to answer as to why X, Y, and Z happened.
Transparency, explanation, honest discussion. These shouldn't be things you're afraid of when you're running a league. This commissioner is afraid of those things. And I've always had a ton of respect for Don Sweeney. I think he's an incredible manager. He's been NHL Executive of the Year, and rightfully so. And here he is leading the way over in that Bruins Panthers series, which has gotten spicy as well.
Because
that we are years past, comparatively speaking, with other sports. Rugby, that takes you right into the discussion as it
microphone
is
on.
The NBA, the last 2-minute report that they're now publishing to let fans, media, and yes, gamblers know, here's what we got right, here's what we got wrong. Acknowledgement of mistakes is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. And it is way past time that the National Hockey League and its officials got to a place where they had to explain themselves and be a little more accountable. Coaches are accountable. 20 of them have been gone since the end of last year. Fired, removed. Players are accountable. They lose their ice time. Some cases they don't get another contract. Hell, even people on this side of the microphone are accountable. You say something stupid, do something. Guess what? You lose audience. And it's high freaking time that officials are accountable to the greater public, and not just this little cadre of Coley, Gary, Bill at the NHL head office.
Before we even knew Kelly Sutherland was doing Game 2 in Vancouver, we had caught wind that Oilers Nation was a little upset, and I mean that literally and figuratively, Oilers Nation, was upset that Steve Kazari got the Game 1 assignment because Steve Kazari's there, Kelly Sutherland. And we said, you know what? If that's not good. And then it happens to the Canuck fan base the very next game. So, like, the NHL can't get out of its own way here. This is management 101 here. Oh, that looks bad. We probably shouldn't do it. There's only 50 other referees we could assign to these games.
And it is very unfortunate and probably says something about the way you've managed communicating the officials and their decision-making and the calls that are made to your customers, to your fan base, that you have this phenomenon where Kelly Sutherland is a 4-letter word in BC, where Steve Kazari is a 4-letter word in Northern Alberta. And here's the thing. So they should never work Canucks and Oilers games respectively again. Certainly not in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, certainly playoffs.
Because the stubbornness of the head office is not a good enough reason to assign them to these games. Their personal feelings are not a good enough reason to assign them to these games. You have a lot of stakeholders here.
I honestly think it's an
you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, he's lost his Vancouver privileges. He's lost his Edmonton privileges through their own failings. They are ultimately responsible for what's happened here.
And to me, it now has become a reason they get the assignment. Well, because if we don't give them those assignments, people will draw the line and they'll say that we're admitting to that.
Except, Blake, there was a shining example, and I'll give them credit for it, despite the fact they didn't want to publicize it much.
They didn't publicize it.
But Stefan Oshie did not work NHL games after the incident with Alex Burrows here in the Nashville.
No, he worked NHL games, not Canuck games.
No, but at the end of the year, he was done.
They're done at the end of the year.
They got rid of him. They parted ways.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because if you go tell a player, I'm going to enact a grudge on you in this game and get you for a penalty, that's not what we need. Officials need to rise above that. Talked about it on Friday's show. Exceedingly difficult job.
Yep.
One that is going to, by its very nature, get you criticized. You need the right sort of human being, of individual who's able to take on all of that, keep the impartiality, and do the job effectively and Matt, without the carryover.
To be fair to Kazari and Sutherland, too, now the baggage is so notable and so public and so big, it can't help but have a subconscious effect on how you referee that game going forward. They are but human. It can't help but affect, oh, well, I'm going to get painted as blah, blah, blah if I don't call that again. Like, I know that, but they're expecting that. So now I'm going to double change this up. And I am going to call this. I know. Like, it'll mess with the guy's head. So just take it out of the equation.
Yeah.
There's so many ways around it.
I will never forget the conversation I had with Colin Campbell around the time of Burrows and Oshie. And before I interviewed him, he interviewed me because I was working for the Globe and Mail at the time. So he didn't know where I was based.
Yeah.
So he asked me, oh, where do you write out of? And I said, Vancouver. And he went, well, Vancouver. I said, sorry? And he goes, well, you're in Vancouver, so I can understand why you're calling me about all this now. And I said, well, Colin, yeah, I live here in Vancouver and have for several years, but, you know, my family's from Montreal. I grew up in Calgary and Ottawa, and I most recently worked in Toronto. Then he didn't know what to make of me, like, because then he's like, oh, well, who are you? You know, are you a
Where's
fan?
Your bias?
Yeah, where's your bias? Who are you a fan of?
Yeah.
And I tried to explain to him, no, I just think your officials said something to Alex Burrows at the game the other night and told him he was going to call a penalty on him because of what happened in a previous game. And, you know, Colin said what he had to say about that. And again, they ultimately got to the right decision. But the very first instinct he had was, what's this guy's regional bias? And if that's a thing in the National Hockey League with its officials, and we'll talk to Tony Gallagher about this later, then you should make sure that they don't officiate games involving clubs from where they grew up. Because the line that we've gotten from a lot of people here in the Lower Main is, oh, yeah, I knew Kelly, or we knew Kelly, and, you know, he was extra tough on the Canucks because he didn't want his peers, his supervisors, certainly not Gary and Bill, to believe that he was easy on his hometown team.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a problem in and of itself. That's as bad as bias towards the hometown team. Anyways, we'll see where the officiating goes in this series from here. Needless to say, you've got a powder keg Tuesday in Edmonton with a lot of folks there feeling hard done by, and we have yet to hear the Carson Soucy suspension. That may bring more grievance to the table. But with regards to Spector's column about institutional surrender, no, and he makes the point he's been coming here for 35 years. Well, then do a better job to figure out what it's about. Ask somebody. I always viewed it as a moment of defiance that the fans picked up on. It was Vancouver's, really, the Canucks' first time on the big stage, right? That 82 run. They hadn't accomplished much in the 12 years previous. And it was this market saying, no, we will be heard from. I like what Daniel Wagner, passed it to Bula, said. The white owl has never been a symbol of surrender in Vancouver, and Canucks fans know it. It's always been a middle finger to the hockey establishment and a rallying cry to the underdog. And it's okay if those outside Vancouver don't understand that. And the reason they don't understand is because the specific Canuck experience, particularly if you go back to 1970, involves a draft wheel where for a moment you're getting a Gilbert Perreault, only to find out, oh no, you didn't win the draft wheel. You're getting Dale Talon. The specific Canuck experience is you draft Pavel Bure and teams go rushing to Central Registry saying, no, he's not eligible. The Canucks are not allowed to have him. The specific Canucks experience is Kelly Sutherland's performance in the 2011 Stanley Cup Final and the 2013 Game 4 against San Jose. The specific Canucks experience is Aaron Rome getting as long a suspension as anybody has ever gotten in a Stanley Cup Final.
For a hit that was 5 frames late.
The specific Canucks experience is being one of a couple of teams to receive a cap recap penalty, and the largest by a mile on the Roberto Luongo contract.
And the only one that it hasn't been reneged upon.
Right.
They actually walked back the Kovalchuk one.
Right. So, you know, you've had all these things happen to you at a league level that aren't forgotten, that have some believing that the National Hockey League doesn't deal with this franchise fairly. Now, Blake, you and I think, have seen eye to eye on this over the years. I do not for a second believe the National Hockey League sent in Kelly Sutherland to make bad calls against the Canucks to even the series against Edmonton because they want to win.
No,
I'm sorry. That's way, way, way too far. There is no evidence of that.
No, just negligence.
No. What I do know is that Kelly Sutherland has a history with the Vancouver Canucks. And what I think is that I'm not sure either side is over that. And thus, to rise above and make sure that no one can claim any kind of impropriety, then it would be best for the National Hockey League to not assign Kelly Sutherland to Vancouver Canucks games.
No, if
it was self-aware, it would be doing that already.
Most of this is not, as Spector points out in the column, tinfoil hat wearing.
No.
This is not about that. This is about negligence for the most part. Just doing a bad job.
Right.
A, doing a bad job managing. B, doing a bad job officiating on a lot of fronts.
Right.
Like how McDavid gets away with slicing Quinn Hughes' cheek open with not a single penalty called. Who knows?
Right. And that's one where linesmen can go in and say, no, I saw the high stick to the face, and that's a penalty. And of course, if it's blood, that's a 4-minute penalty.
And, you know, they end up equalizing the Zadorov penalty last night with the Evander Kane hit. But in the playoffs, really, like how many times do we see that play? It never results in a penalty. Like it's just, you know, the inconsistencies and gross negligence. It gets to be too much for a Canucks fan that is discerning hockey.
Right.
That 54 years without a cup and no first round pick or first overall pick. That'll.
And Blake and I are not going to take the craziest conspiracy theories to the fore and represent them. But we are going to ask questions and represent positions that Canucks fans come up with that we agree with, that we think are defendable.
And when a GM of a team not named the Vancouver Canucks, in this case, the Boston Bruins, who were once the apple of the eye, when that GM is saying, can they just be accountable a little bit?
Like, why are you asking my coach about it when you could ask them? And that's what we've been saying for years. Yeah. Exactly. Make the officials available post-game, and then you get it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
And then we get better information in which to evaluate them. Of course, if you would have to believe in the exchange of information, ideas, and the things that the NHL just can't bring itself to.
Communication.
You know, instead, what the NHL does is it leaks to its preferred reporters, the guys they know will protect the industry, and leaves everybody else on the sidelines where we have to take that word.
We're not taking Matt, you could argue that not calling penalties, of course, is the more dangerous action too, right? Mm-hmm. Like McDavid not getting called for that double minor or major, however they could have sliced it. Does that play into, well, I guess we can do whatever we want out here? Mm-hmm. Like, does Carson Soucy react that way because he's like, this is the guy that sliced my captain last game? You know, is that parked in the back of Carson Soucy's brain? Same with Nikita Zadorov.
And we have the Zadorov clip here up on YouTube, courtesy of Sportsnet, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
so Look, God, as we said Friday, for the 6 games of the Nashville Predators series and game 1 against Edmonton, I had almost zero problem with the officiating.
We didn't bring it up once.
Call here, call there. That could have been different. Oh. Yeah, sure enough. But I didn't for a second think that officiating was a storyline against the Predators or in game 1. It has clearly become a storyline here in game 2 and game 3. And that's unfortunate. And I think we'd all probably like if we can just go back to talking about good hockey in game 4 without the Chicken Little skies falling business with the officiating.
There's an extra impetus or an extra care that needs to be taken to officiating in this series of all series because both power plays are working.
Yep.
So
really working.
If you call a power play,
yep,
you change the game right now in this series.
And the other reason is people in Edmonton and across British Columbia know the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, with all due respect, I don't believe there's a lot of people in South Florida who can give you the definition of a lot of NHL penalties. You referee in Canada, people understand the game. Many have played it.
Yeah.
Many have officiated it. So you've got to reach an even higher standard when you're calling an all-Canadian series, because it means more here and people are more knowledgeable about the sport and its rule book. Okay, let's move on. We talked about one of the recipes for success for the Vancouver Canucks prior to the series being the Edmonton goaltending. And once again, Stuart Skinner is shook. Didn't look great at the end of game 2 or 2 periods after the second period in game 2. They wound up winning the game in the third period and in overtime. Comes out for game 3. And, well, he gets outplayed by the Canucks' third stringer, Arturs Silovs, the rookie from Latvia who makes 42 saves on the evening. Actually, before we discuss more on Skinner, let's hear from Coach Tocchet on Silovs.
It's a big stage, and he's not blinking. He's doing he's coming to every day, and he's working hard. He's working with Clarkie a lot on off days. Low maintenance guy. I don't really see him around too much, to be honest with you. Like, he's just a low maintenance guy. And obviously he's got some, whether it's a small sample size with some pressure games. We talk about the World Championships and all that stuff, but he's played some good, this is good for him. Like, these are pressure games.
And it's clear now he's reaching back into the experience of the World Championships when it was vastly on him to keep Latvia afloat. He's taken off. He's not at the optional skate. It's just Smith and Tolopilo, the 2 goalies. And it's a day off well earned for Arturs Silovs.
Mm-hmm. He it's funny because games 1, games 3, he's looked a little more scrambling. Not quite tracking the puck as much. Maybe a few more rebounds, and yet those are the games he's won.
And he never dies on the play, though,
Game
right?
2, he looked calm. Yeah, where he's without the stick and scrambling to get back into his net.
Yeah, the glove on Perry, like
then the pouncing cat look.
Yeah, no, something else.
Hey, we had a friend of ours, an old hockey guy, bring up what I think is a very apropos comparison. Older hockey fans might remember a Montreal Canadiens goaltender, Steve Penny. This is pre-Patrick Roy. Minor league guy, young guy, didn't have a lot of experience, and then came in and played lights out hockey for the Habs in the postseason. I believe that was the 84 postseason, where he became the talk of hockey that spring. Like, who is this Steve Penny guy, and what the hell is he doing to Boston or whomever the opponent was? Artie Silovs has a lot of that going on right now. Okay, on to Skinner. First of all, I was really surprised that Knobloch hooked him.
Couldn't believe
after 2 periods.
Couldn't believe it.
You're down 2. Look, he hadn't looked great. I'll give him that. But you're down 2 goals, and your backup Calvin Pickard is like
ice cold,
pure backup. Hasn't played in a while.
The
Canucks, the Canucks actually threatened the goal in the third period. That might have been. It might have
made
been
their
a little
life
less,
easier.
anxious in the final seconds.
But the Oilers can score twice during a sneezing fit. That's nothing.
No, exactly.
They're in the game.
So
and
to do, because I think that further unsettled him, especially when he talks about today how the emotions got the best of him and he felt like he let the team down, and that's why he didn't want to do post-game media. So, I thought you had a fragile goaltender to begin with, and I think you, as a head coach, did more to unsettle going forward. Put him back in there for the third. I don't even think it's a confidence boost, because I think the decision was so out of left field that it would be a lot more benign than that. But now I think you've contributed to the rattling of confidence.
And I think the rattling of confidence extends beyond the crease, because of course they can't score on gloves. They can't get a save. So I think this is unsettling now for a core group of scorers that are getting more and more tired, playing 30 minutes a game for Draisaitl and McDavid. And let's hear from Draisaitl last night, courtesy of Sportsnet. This is him talking about Silovs, and when he was asked whether or not it was bad luck for the shooter or good goaltending.
Goalposts tonight. You generated the chances. How much of that is bearing down, or how much of that is just good goaltending or luck?
Well, post is not good goaltending.
Post is not good goaltending.
Uh-oh. Sounds like Leon being pissy again. Maybe Jim Matheson should go in there, the Hall of Fame, and ask him why so pissy.
Why are you so pissy, Leon?
Every goaltender will tell you the reason why you hit the post is because I had the space between the posts covered. Grant Fuhr's, we got an infamous quote on that.
Yeah.
That's all I gave them was the posts.
Well, and if Draisaitl's from the Patrick Waugh school of never give an inch to the opposing guy, so be it. Patrick, it was always a lucky shot against Patrick,
but it's to the point that even statistically speaking, hitting the post is not called a shot on goal.
Yeah.
Strictly speaking, it's not a shot on goal. Can't score. You can only score on shots on goal, Leon, and that is not one of them. So,
meanwhile, Stuart Skinner has let in how many goals against the Canucks now? Is it 13? And most goals allowed versus low quality shots, the Stanley Cup playoffs. So first round 2. 13. This is a guy who has a career .881 save percentage, which is the lowest out of any goaltender with 20-plus games since the 2005 lockout.
Yeah, we're talking Frank Saravelli of the Daily Faceoff did a piece on this today. Of 69 goalies since 2005 with at least 15 playoff appearances, Stuart Skinner ranks dead last in save percentage at .881. That's in 20 games.
Skinner.
And as Frank notes, he's getting the wheels beaten off him by Silovs, who I can assure you not a lot of people in Edmonton had heard of before this postseason. Hell, we had barely heard of.
Well, and Oiler fans and Leaf fans, they must look at stories like this and go, we search purposefully for 10 years for a starting goaltender that can push our core group over the top. And the Canucks are forced into a third stringer, and they get this.
And Blake, it's another example of it's not the credentialed goalie, it's the hot goalie in the Stanley Cup playoffs that matters. And look, I do not blame Ken Holland or the Oilers in the least for believing in Skinner. He had a very good year when they made the coaching change and settled down the defensive structure of the club. Skinner was terrific from that point.
The goalie fraternity was fully endorsing him.
Absolutely. I was talking to Kevin Woodley of In Goal Media about my NHL All-Star votes and what 3 goalies should be on that list. Knowing Hellebuck and Demko would probably be, but who was the third guy? And we brought up a bunch of goaltenders, and we talked, and Skinner was one of them.
Very good goals above expected in the second half of the season. He found his way.
Where you can fault Ken Holland, though, about goaltending is signing Jack Campbell to that contract.
Fair enough.
That was an emotional signing.
He is supposed to be the one tending the goal crease right now.
But what I mean is, like, as this season went along, nobody was saying, oh, the Oilers have to go out and get a goaltender. No.
Well, there
he
was
had won.
Well,
he had won the
I-
trust.
I would push back on that. I don't think Calvin Pickard was
Okay, so
gonna
get a
be your-
backup goaltender.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
right, but and there was nobody saying going out and get one, but there was still the caveat of, hey, Skinner's played great, but he's unproven in the playoffs. What's he going to give? And they're getting that answer, and it's not a good one so far.
Yep. Kind of reminds me, Blake, when I was back in Ottawa 20 years ago. Great teams. Patrick Lalime in goal. Looked great during the regular
puck's going
season,
through 'em.
and then come playoff time.
Now, all this, I think it needs to be said, Matt, the Canucks have not won this series. And,
they're a long way from
and
the series.
they have played in a manner that is concerning at times.
Oh, absolutely. The lack of shots, the lack of shot attempts in 2 of these 3 games.
Like they kitty barn the door. They parked the bus better than the Oilers tried to park the bus in game number 1. So credit to them, but that can't be the game plan.
No.
That's not on the whiteboard.
No.
Score a couple of early goals and you guys park yourself around your goaltender for 41 minutes.
Penalty kills got to get better.
Yep.
Certainly when Draisaitl plays on McDavid's wing, that is still a huge concern for the Canucks. And I mean, they're still not where they want to be with secondary scoring, right?
No, I mean
it's 2 power play goals and 2 goals from the Besser Miller line last night. And that means you got a lot of passengers. I mean, again, and they were physical on the first shift.
So I'll ask
that
you,
great third line plays a terrific game 1 and then fades into the, does the wallflower routine to some degree in game 2 or game 3. We saw that in the first round. It's happened again.
not a lot of people are betting that he changes the personnel, but would you shuffle the deck chairs? Would you load up
my
a second
goodness.
line,
I mean,
Elias and Elias? Because Lindholm's not doing a ton 5-on-5 with those 2 guys.
no.
I wonder if Patterson, Garland,
but
and
frankly,
Lindholm,
unlike the regular season where I felt it was more Lindholm as opposed to Garland and Joshua, now I think it is Lindholm doing his part, and it's the 2 wingers there.
what I would be worried about if they did load up, because part of me wants them to do it, Elias, and Garland as a second line, is you just turn to the Oilers to some degree. Like you've got half the game where nothing's happening.
So coming out of Friday, I felt like the Canucks had to give a serious look at Lotto line. And I know conventionally speaking, if the Oilers are going to load up a line, and they're not only just loading up a line like Jay Fresh, and apologies, but this is prior to game 3, so these are not updated numbers. Oilers are aggressively deploying McDavid with Bouchard instead of Nurse and Ceci. He spent 80% of his 5-on-5 time with Bouchard compared to just 11 with Nurse. In the regular season, it was 67% with Bouchard and 23% with Nurse. So they're not only giving you that, showing you that line with Draisaitl on the wing with McDavid, but they're also playing it with their best offensive defenseman, of course, who has the big blast from the point in Bouchard, and he's got a goal. And incidentally, the one thing the Canucks need to do in game 4 is they've got to find an answer to this Matthias Ekholm guy who has scored in all 3 games from the Oilers blue line. But conventionally speaking, you would say, okay, if they're going to load up a line like that or load up a 5 like that, then spread your wealth, take advantage of your matchups.
Star power on star power.
Right.
And look at the
But I've got 2 problems with that. Number 1, the Patterson line is doing SFA. And really, the third line isn't doing much either. So you're not winning the matchups you're supposed to win. And then secondly, particularly when you look at the zone time and some of the analytics of the Draisaitl McDavid line in game 2, you've got to force them to play in their zone a little bit. And I think Lotto line would do that to some degree, or to better measure than what the Miller line was able to do in game 2.
Mark on Twitter, why would you want Lotto line? Petey will just mess it up. I mean,
well, we're getting to that point as well.
Does he drag them down in the end? But
man.
the other part is you're not going to get the full matchup there because there is not a planet where Rick Tocchet matches them line for line and plays those guys 30 minutes.
Right.
He's not going to play his best forwards for 30 minutes. So it's not going to be all encompassing anyhow. So you might as well have a couple of lines that can match up against him and share the duties a little bit, because that's what it effectively is here. Draisaitl and McDavid have become 2 lines while being on the same line. That's the division of time now from Knobloch. And so you got to figure out how you're going to spread the human resources to actually cover those 2 guys. Or we go back to what
so you should, get on a Zoom with HR, figure
right.
it all out.
Or you do what we talked a little bit, or I talked a little bit about on the weekend or on Friday, maybe. Elias and Elias together with Mikheyev, and you reunite Teddy Bluger with Garland and
that is something that can get my head around.
Then you've got some depth that you can kind of trust, because you would use that third line.
Well, because the other thing is, and again, he's not scoring. He will never score, but at least Mikheyev is a little more active.
I notice him.
Well, Mikheyev, you know how we used to say Lafferty, you notice one shift a game where you go, wow, look at the wheels.
Yeah.
They're like two shifts like that for Ilya Mikheyev.
He's a big body and he's fast. And so he kind of gets in the way, and he's just sort of a stopper.
Right. At least you hope
he's a garnish on the plate.
The defensive side of the puck.
It's something. Yeah.
Is he like those string carrots or the radish? Or
yeah. You can eat if you want. Like, they're not toxic, but they're not a part of the order.
No.
Yeah.
Thatcher Demko is taking shots now. And of course, Dr. Frank Saravelli on Friday, he said, hey, one of the big things here is him taking shots, and the next week will be crucial. So things seem to be tracking well with Thatcher Demko, Blake.
Okay, but Matt, we're back to now. Are you taking this more seriously now? What are the circumstances that get Demko into this lineup?
This is what I'm saying. If Silovs shits the bed in game 6, then I think you go with Thatcher Demko if he's ready to play in game 7.
Right.
But do you...
That starts to be the only scenario I can envision.
Well, and again, I've been thinking about this as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you can take a hot Silovs out of the cage, even if Demko is healthy.
The only worry about it is fatigue for
Silovs,
which is why he was sitting out the optional, I believe, and you just tell him to stay in bed all day today.
With those blackout curtains,
yes.
Get your rest, Artie.
Well, he's in a hotel now, so he should be good.
Oh, I wonder if they have blackout curtains.
All hotels have blackout
in Edmonton.
The traveling black curtains.
Really?
Oh, all hotels have blackout curtains. Yes.
Really?
Yes. Because people are arriving from all parts of the world. They need to be assured they can sleep. Yes. Every hotel's blackout.
What are blackout curtains?
Just cause darkness. They seal it in. It's not translucent. It's opaque.
It's not opaque.
No, a blackout curtain is opaque. That light does not travel through it.
I thought they were a brand name for a second.
No.
So you're just talking about the double curtains in hotel rooms.
Right. One
is
is
the little white one that is
see-through.
translucent.
Yeah.
And then you got the thicker ones.
There you go. Now you got it.
Okay. Do they always is there that little crack on the edge on each end?
It depends on the quality of hotel and blackout curtain, but that is the pursuit, is to eliminate the crack. There's your
little white crack.
Sounds like you needed them when you started your writing career in your mom's basement, Matt. Let the light in. No?
I'm not following that reference.
Blogging in mom's basement? Come on.
Blogging.
It's like the one
computers didn't
number
exist
one
when he was young.
Blogging.
Kidding me? He's
He
on
was
a
a typewriter.
Yeah.
Grady, you remember this. If nothing else, you remember this. People published me at an early age.
Wow.
On paper.
Weird flex.
That was delivered
Don't
to
know what
people's
that
doors.
is.
It's if Spec can flex, I can flex too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty
Wasn't
sure
that I sent an email to somebody nebulously who posted in some deep dark corner.
Or your own website. Publishing on your own website. Yeah.
I used it for kindling, starting fires.
That's right. The next day, it was lining the birdcage, and we always remembered that.
Especially the weekend.
Better be good today, because
The weekend
whatever I
globe.
did yesterday is now at the bottom.
Couple of weekend globes to get you through the entire summer or winter, I guess.
Yeah, they were pithy, thick.
Yes.
Not thick
Lots
anymore.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Remember how big the Saturday paper
Oh,
was?
huge.
Hit with a thump on the
Yeah,
doorstep.
there's a lot fewer trees being cut down.
And now you have a scholarship at Carleton in your name. How the mighty have come.
Except that cost me money.
Oh,
Well, donation. PDG away from the club. Not sure why. We'll see if he comes back for game 4. You liked Oman yesterday?
No, I like Carlson.
You liked Carlson?
I thought Oman was neither here nor there. I'd be willing to see pods at this point there.
Still no pods, huh?
Still no pods.
Carlson and Oman over pods.
what'd you guys think of them?
Carlson was heavy, I thought. And that's what Carlson played the kind of game that I would expect Pods to play, frankly, if he got in. Good along the walls. I thought I saw him bust through a couple of stick checks and just keep the puck deep, like it's really going to be your likely task is just like keep the puck in the opposition zone. Forecheck the hell out of it. 25 seconds later, I want your ass back on the bench.
All right, get ready for the Daily Face-Off Playoff Parlay Challenge. Each game day, answer 4 questions. Pick the winning team. Guess the points will be over, under. Predict the first goal. Choose the highest scoring period. Daily winners snag gift cards. Round winners get straight cash. Play now. Games.dailyfaceoff.com. And, of course, shop for your We Have an Army Nation Gear t-shirt at nationgear.ca. We finally have an army here. It's taken a long time. Gear up at nationgear.ca. Let's get to, before we go to today's menu, I'll say this. As big a cesspool as Twitter can be, sometimes there's just funny lines there. Got one in hashtags. I want to shout out Robbie at Dosange, the only person not able to see the Northern Lights in Vancouver tonight. Kelly Sutherland.
No. Zing.
Did you see the Northern Lights on?
Spectacular.
I got home. I was so
spectacular.
disappointed because I was seeing all this great photography. And by the time I got home and I even heard like people were assembling down at Kitts Point, that area. So I get home, I go out on my balcony and say, and like you could tell there was something in the sky, but I certainly didn't get the vibrant colors or anything like that.
Cameras brought out the colors more than the human eye did.
That's what I later heard.
Yeah.
That's what I later heard.
If you looked at them through your camera, they were even more spectacular.
Yep.
But light pollution didn't do us any favors.
Well, like here's the thing. Apropos nothing, there have been a couple of other times that I've been sitting out on my deck at night and I've seen much more color and dancing and it was been odd, way more than Friday. It was a huge letdown.
It was just what the doctor ordered because the kids were all down that the Canucks had lost that night. And then we went outside and everything was forgotten.
Got a nice glass of red vino.
I think it was beer, but yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I drove to North End, Cleveland Dam, to try to see them.
It was jammed there, wasn't it?
It was bumping.
So you drove from Port Moody for this?
Hey, when you date a science geek and she wants to see the Northern Lights,
and you were just along for the way?
Oh, I was a little oiled up.
Were you? I hope you were editing along the way, right? Taking
yeah.
advantage of that time.
I hit publish on that post game, and I was 1 foot out the door already.
Were you?
Oh yeah,
that's the sort of dedication we're looking for, Grady Sass.
Posting from the below Grouse Mountain.
What's Sean Chessman doing next week? Is he available?
He's quiet back there. Look at him.
Very quiet.
He's dialed in. He's cutting up the G-Man.
I like it when he's dialed in.
Editing the G-Man, not cutting him up.
Time now for today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta, and we were at Greta last night, and we will be at Greta Tuesday night, as we are for away games. There's a hockey game going on. You may have heard, Blake.
There is, yeah.
So why don't you come on down to Greta, 50 West Cordova. We've got some prizing on site. May do some intermission trivia. Everybody who stops by the Sekeres Price table is going to get a free gaming card. It's good for 3 hours of gameplay. We celebrate the first Canucks goal with something special. And you watch the game with like-minded people. So,
please do join.
Come join us.
Yeah.
At our spot, our home away from home, Greta Bar. J. Pat stopping by. So is Tony Gallagher.
Yeah.
I read Spector's column. I saw he invoked Tony's name. I reached out to Tony. He said, "Is this about the Spector column?" I said, "Well, yeah, Tony, to a degree it is." And he's like, "What time you need me there?" So we got Tony on the program, and we got JPAT on the program as well. Jeff from Edmonton, where he is covering the series. I understand the 650 guys have joined in Edmonton now. That's great. Good.
Good for Rogers.
Way to go, Rogers.
Way to go, Rogers.
Yeah, so
open up that one.
Crowdfunded
to foot the bill there.
Send the guys there.
Next segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price. And, well, Blake, you know what's been missing from this Stanley Cup playoff run from the Vancouver Canucks, 9 games in? A goal from Quinn Hughes.
It's true.
Yes.
Captain has not scored yet. He's due. The Oilers goaltending is a train wreck. And I think Hughes should know that the time is ripe now for one of those solo pinches off the blue line, picking a hole on a bad angle. Remember how many times we saw that goal from Hughes, particularly early in the season?
And I wonder if they give him more room up there because of Besser's shenanigans closer to goal. Make sure that he's covered, giving Hughes some more room, maybe.
Right. He scored more goals this year. He's got a better shot. So Hughes is an anytime goal scorer, paying plus 400.
Oh,
I'm going to tonight's menu, and the Avalanche looking to even the series with the Stars, and I think they do so, and I think they explode tonight. I think this is one of those nights where they're motivated, their offense shines, and I'm taking the minus 1.5 goals, pays out a plus 175.
You know when Grady gives you an on your bet of the day.
Got a hot take?
Well, you feel better about it because, of course, he's looking at
all value
prop,
picks. Yes, he wants value.
There is nothing that is going to escape his gaming eye. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. That's VANBONUS altogether, all one word. J-Pat's next. J-Pat's next.
J-Pat is next.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com. In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Our next guest is brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, now open for the 2024 season and playing to rave reviews. Saw some of the photography and joy from the players who got on there opening weekend. Tee times for any time during the 2024 season can be booked online now. And if you have a group of 12 or more, the group organizer, plays for free. For more information or to book online, visit whistlergolf.com. Joined now by our Canucks reporter, Rink Wide Vancouver's Jeff Patterson, who is in Edmonton covering the series after a spicy Game 3. How we doing, J-Pat?
Good. I saw some of that video from Whistler as well. Looks spectacular. I'm delighted to be here in Edmonton covering this series because it is getting heated and getting good. But my mind was drifting to the fairways of Whistler.
Incidentally, that one bear there
goes very well. That course.
That one bear that tackled the other bear did get a game suspension. They looked at it and said it crossed the line. So
George Peros, after an extensive interview,
was that the bear that grabbed the flagstick and cross-checked? Is that?
And those things don't break,
right.
You know.
Right.
Boy, the physicality's picked up. It's spicy off the ice, press box everywhere on the ice. The series is officially launched, Jeff Patterson.
This is exactly what you get for a one anthem Canadian on Canadians.
And exactly what we all wanted. Like, come on. This is the, like, think of the past Springs guys where we've all been sideline observers to everything that's going on and wishing that we could be in the middle of it, and the players and the hockey club. And here they are now into round 2 with a 2-1 lead on the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, crazy with the shots on goal and the territorial advantage. But at the end of the night, did they outscore the Oilers? Yes, they did. Do they have a lead in this series? Yes, they do. Have they taken back home ice advantage? Indeed, they have. Now, there are storylines galore. But, you know, the way the game unfolded with the Oilers opening the scoring on a power play, like that just felt like the script that not only the Oilers, but their fan base wanted to see early in the hockey game. And for the Canucks to counter 3 minutes later with a power play goal of their own, I thought that was a massive part of that game because it settled the Canucks down. And obviously they built on that lead in the first period. Guys, it was loud early and he got really quiet at the end of the first period. In fact, I kind of thought that the Oilers might get booed off the ice on home ice after 20 minutes of play. Clearly, there are goaltending issues here. We know the Canucks have had their goaltending drama as well. So storylines for days, the way you want in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, so as we move into Game 3 here, Jeff, like what storylines are you following closest? Which ones are the ones that are resonating with you?
I think for me, it's the Oilers' lack of depth, that their stars have come to play. Guys, 3 games into the series, the Oilers have 3 goals from forwards, and you can guess who the 3 are. I did not expect that 3 games into the series, the Oilers would have more goals from defensemen than they have from forwards. And so the question, you're going to continue to get the effort and probably the production from McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman, but like, where is the rest of their roster? And that's the question that's obviously being asked here in Edmonton. And I think for me, the other thing is, look, the Canucks have more power plays than the Oilers do through 3 games, which is a victory in and of itself. And while the Oilers are 4 for 8 on the power play, 50%, 2 massive kills in the third period for the Vancouver Canucks. They give up 2, and yet their penalty kill rose to the challenge in the third period. But the fact that the Oilers have 4 power play goals and it's being offset by 3 power play goals from the Vancouver Canucks, again, like, if you told me 3 games into this thing that the Canucks would have had more power plays and that they would have been outscored by 1 with the man advantage, I think the Canucks would have signed up for that all day, every day. And so here we are. And that's one of the reasons, at 5-on-5, they've outscored the Oilers 7-5 so far in this series. And
the unintended consequences of that for Knobloch, of the bench not helping out at all for him, is that, half an hour a game, 30 minutes a game for Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid is not sustainable. They are the most skilled players on the planet, but they're made out of the same matter as everybody else. They cannot do that for multiple games in a row and then still be at their best, right? Like, you're going to get a law of diminishing returns here on those players.
Well, if you're out there 30 minutes, you up the odds that you're going to absorb physical contact, whether it's in the game or after the final buzzer, whatever the case, you're putting yourself in harm's way. And that's part of it as well. Now, easier said than done to go and hit McDavid. But, if you can get a body on any of those guys at every opportunity, there's that compounding effect over the course of a long series. And look, even if the Oilers do come back, and I'm not ruling the Edmonton Oilers out of the series, but you're right, for a team that had these designs on winning the Stanley Cup, that just does not seem at all to me like any kind of blueprint for a lengthy journey here in the spring of 2024.
And Jeff, Blake and I had a bit of a debate about this after game 2, because I think it's sustainable for the Oilers to win this series. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm not sure you can win a cup with your best forwards playing 28, 29 minutes a night over 4 rounds. But if it's just Knobloch's formula for trying to get through this series, it is one I think could work, and one the Canucks are going to have to contend with.
Canucks are lucky that there's no extended breaks. Remember, in Nashville, there was 2 breaks of 2 days. This is every other day. Like that works against the Edmonton Oilers here, Jeff.
Yeah, and look, like, we can sit here and say, hey, getting outshot 22-3 in the third period, that's not sustainable either. But that's the way the Canucks have gone about their business. And, again, they have more wins than the Oilers do in the series. They've won 6 of their 9 games in the playoffs, and they've done it on the back of a third-string goaltender. So, sometimes there's things that just don't make sense, but you keep doing them until they don't work anymore. And for the Oilers, you're right. Like, Knobloch's hands are tied because, where's Evander Kane? Where's Warren Fogle? Where's Dylan Holloway? Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has 4 points. 3 of them have come on the power play. He hasn't done a lot 5-on-5 either. And it goes on. And they're playing the waiting game here, but the clock is ticking. And now, as it was after 1 game, the Canucks have a real opportunity to turn up the heat here and put the screws to Edmonton if they can get the job done again. Now, it's a big if, and give the Oilers an opportunity to respond the way they did in game number 2. But, the Canucks aren't afraid of being out on the road here. They're 4-0. They're the only team in the playoffs that's got to 4 wins on the road so far this spring. So 3 in Nashville, and they found a way to grind it out here on Sunday night in game number 4. So, to me, again, all the pressure has been, I think the pressure was on the Oilers at the outset of the series, but right now it has been shifted back to the Edmonton Oilers, and we'll see if it's more than 3 or 4 guys that show up and contribute on Tuesday night in game 4.
Yeah. Oilers' lack of depth, Oilers giving up power play goals to the Canucks, 2 big problems for them, no doubt. But I think the biggest one is their goaltending yet again.
Yeah.
So question, Jeff, are the Canucks in Stuart Skinner's head? Did Chris Knobloch get in Stuart Skinner's head with that pull, or is just Stuart Skinner in Stuart Skinner's head? as we move to game 3 here?
Yeah, I could probably say a little bit of everything there. This has been a narrative in Edmonton with two of the best players of their generation, and they show up every year in the playoffs, and they've done it again. They're leading the playoffs in scoring, and yet they have trouble getting saves. And I think everybody here thought that Stuart Skinner had taken some strides and had made progress and had looked like a legitimate number one goaltender, the way that they used him, the way that he responded like the team did after the coaching change. But man, I gave up 5 in the second game of the the Los Angeles series in round number 1. And it's just been too easy for the Canucks to put pucks past him. And so, I sat in on the Chris Knobloch post-game press conference last night, and just about every question, even though we just talked about the fact that there hasn't been a lot of depth scoring, like 80% of the questions to the coach were about goaltending and needing more saves, and would he start him, and has he lost his confidence, and how is he going to respond, all those types of things. So absolutely talking point number 1 here on the ground in Edmonton. But I'm seeing national reporters now writing these same stories about, is this going to be the same undoing for the Edmonton Oilers? And until Stuart Skinner rises to the challenge, then yes, that's an ongoing storyline. And Knobloch wouldn't commit to starting him in game 4. Jack Campbell is here as their third goaltender, and there was some talk. We've seen the Canucks third stringer. Will we see the Canucks or the Oilers go that deep on their goaltending roster as well? So again, one of the storylines, a prominent storyline, and no answers today, but let's see what the light of day brings on Tuesday with a morning skate, and if we can glean a little bit more intel on what the Edmonton Oilers are thinking. Because the question now might not even be who's starting, but who's going to finish for them on a given night.
Very good, Jeff.
Just imagine, though.
It's gotta be Skinner, though, right? I think they have to go
I think they're starting Skinner, yeah. Just imagine if they got more shots on Skinner, too, though. I know Rick Tocchet wasn't super pleased at how they finished that game. How did you interpret his post-game post-mortem on, their parking of the bus?
Yeah, they thought that they did a much better job defending, even though the shots were 22-3, and the Oilers had, I think, 8 or 9 power play shots in that third period. I really didn't like the second period, to be perfectly honest. They'd done well to build the 3-1 lead, and then it felt like they hadn't learned anything from Friday night, where they sat back and tried to defend, and the Oilers just came at them in waves and ultimately won that game in overtime. I thought it got a little dicey in the second period, and the Canucks got a power play. I think it was Ekholm that took a penalty late in the second period. Canucks didn't do anything with it, but it felt like 2 minutes where they were just able to exhale a little bit. And I thought over the final 3 or 4 minutes of the period, because then Darnell Nurse took that penalty, and look, we can talk about officiating. That was a bad call. That was a weak call on Darnell Nurse in a tight game. And the Canucks capitalized. They took advantage, and that was Lindholm scoring what turned out to be the game winner. So that was a pivotal point in the hockey game, because they had posts. They had the couple of pucks that were in the blue paint around the goal line. They came close on a couple of occasions, but close doesn't count. And ultimately, the Canucks cashed in on their limited opportunities. So, it's funny, the shot discrepancy, but if you look at the underlying numbers, the high dangers in that third period, weren't anywhere close to what you think they might have been, given how much territory the Oilers had there. So I do think that, the proof's in the pudding a little bit. Rick Tocchet was quick to give praise to his assistant coaches, didn't name names, but obviously Adam Foote and Mike Yeo. He thought they did a great job between games, just trying to tweak some things defensively. Said they had a really good video session the morning of game 3, and he thought that went a long way to helping the Canucks, again, keep the Oilers to the outside. Guys, 3 games into this series, Connor McDavid has 5 points. 4 of them came on Friday night. So you do the math there. The other 2 games, they've done a pretty good job of keeping him to the perimeter.
They held him pointless one night. They held him without a shot on goal the other night. No, they through totality of the series, they've done a very good job on McDavid.
Let's ask you roster decisions here. Let's assume a Susie suspension. What do you think they do back there? And let's assume the PDG is available to the Vancouver Canucks. We don't know that to be true. But if Rick Tocchet has everybody at his disposal, needs to fill a defense spot, and could tweak the forward spots, what do you think he does?
I don't think he touches the forwards. I think he was pretty happy with what he saw. Linus Karlsson far more engaged in a pressure cooker playoff appearance than he was in any of the 4 games that he played earlier in the season. I thought he won some board battles, away from the puck. He didn't look lost in the moment here. Neil Zaman, underlying numbers weren't great, but guys, he played 1 game. He played game 82 in Winnipeg, basically as a token appearance. in the last 6 weeks, and then he gets thrown in and is killing penalties in the third period against that power play. Come on. Like, that's a high leverage moment. And again, pulling on the rope in the right direction. So I don't think you tinker with those guys. Did I love the idea of parking a 24-goal scorer, Nils Höglander? Not necessarily, but I also know that Nils Höglander hasn't looked any bit like that regular season Höglander in these playoffs. So I didn't have a huge issue with Tocchet. I mean, buck stops with him. He's got to make those calls and live with the consequences, but they win the hockey game. So I would think you're probably going to see more of Amon and Karlsson on defense. That's, if Soucy is suspended, and as we record, we don't know that. Look, Carson Soucy's underlying numbers have been brutal, but he's had the McDavid-Draisaitl matchup, and yet through all the brutal underlying numbers, the Canucks have outscored the Oilers 3-2 at 5-on-5. So even though territorially he's been defending a ton, it really hasn't cost the Canucks on the scoreboard. And look, he's got the size, the reach, the length, the disruptive nature of the way that he plays. They will miss Carson Soucy without a doubt. And I thought it was kind of cool to hear Rick Tocchet. He name-checked Tyler Myers last night as one of the guys that he thought really stood out. And I would agree. I think Tyler Myers is playing some of the best hockey that he's played in a Vancouver Canuck uniform. We just haven't had the chance to see him rise to the occasion of playoff hockey because the team hasn't been in the postseason nearly enough. But for all the naysayers over the years, and look, I got it early on, but Tyler Myers right now really becoming a valuable piece for the Vancouver Canucks.
He has, absolutely. I thought all the big guys have been really good. Nikita Zadorov was once again front and center. Jeff, he's 29 years of age. How come he's not a household name in the NHL? I didn't watch him closely as a member of the Colorado Avalanche and his a good playoff season there. But the guy's an absolute beast, stuffing Kane into the locker there. I mean, he's just everywhere. He's front and center. How come it's 29 years old before Nikita Zadorov is making headlines in the NHL?
Yeah, look, I think he's a bit of a unique character, and I don't know that he's everybody's flavor. I think in Calgary, there were some stories that maybe he had rubbed some teammates the wrong way. Yeah, he's a flashy guy. We see it in the clothes that he wears. And, again, to each their own. Like, I'm not here to knock him at all. I mean, I'm having a ball watching him perform at the highest levels here. But I do wonder if, earlier in his career, maybe there was some attitude or, I wasn't there along the stops, but it does kind of feel like he has settled in. It sounds like he and his family absolutely love Vancouver. So, we'll
there's a maturation. Yeah, for sure.
No, I mean, we all grew up at different times, whatever the case. When the lights are brightest, this guy has been invaluable to the Vancouver Canucks. And, that's another piece of the puzzle here, guys, that isn't really getting a ton of run, but probably should, with the way that Elias Lindholm is playing and Nikita Zadorov. Like, Jim Rutherford looks like he did it again, getting ahead of the market, identifying his targets, bringing them in. And, was the regular season performance a little spotty? Yeah, but they were both brought in to bolster this lineup for the playoffs. 14 points between the two of them. And Lindholm leads this team in power play goals, game-winning goals. He's second only to Besser. And I thought he was terrific last night. And Zadorov's just been consistently good throughout the playoffs. And so, you look at the Canucks, could they have used another scoring winger at the deadline? Sure. But in terms of the players that they identified and targeted, credit to management and pro scouting, because it looks like they got it right with both of these guys. And they have both been contributors in this series, but also through the playoffs. And it shows with Lindholm. Like, clearly he wasn't healthy there over those final few weeks, but that first shift, like, that's as determined as I am.
Oh, wow.
Talk about announcing his arrival and his intentions for the night. The big hit on Bouchard, takes the puck to the net, had a great scoring chance there, doesn't score, but contributes twice, and including the game winner, up to 5 goals now in the playoffs.
Do you consider Patterson with Lindholm? Do you consider that to get Patterson going, or just keep as is lineup combinations?
Who's that now?
Patterson. I see what you did there.
Good.
I see what
Honestly,
you did there.
guys, like, there were incremental steps, and he scored, and people thought that was going to relieve the burden. I thought last night was a return to the first 5 games of the Nashville series, the final 20 games of the regular season. Like, there just wasn't much there for Elias Patterson. And again, this is part of this thing that the Canucks have won 6 of their 9 playoff games with a third-string goaltender, and next to no contributions from an 89-point producer. So
Hey,
I don't know where it goes from here. I'm sort of back to square one with your guess is as good as mine is what we're going to see from Elias Patterson in Game 4.
A couple of things. Number one, talk about things that are unsustainable. The Oilers forwards playing 30 minutes a night. The Canucks not getting shots on goal. Elias Patterson not scoring. The Stanley Cup playoffs deliver us some weird things that we got to negotiate.
Can you imagine being an out-of-market fan?
No, I know.
Because, in the playoffs, guys, you tune into games that you wouldn't otherwise watch,
Mm-hmm.
An out-of-market fan tuning in to watch Elias Patterson. Oh, I've heard about this guy. It's supposed to be really good. And then you watch that game, you're like, what?
You watch 9 games and go,
right,
what's going on here? I don't get it. As for Zadorov, and honestly, I thought the Gillis regime did a really good job of sort of educating us on these sorts of things. Players have things in their lives that sometimes affect their play. In Nikita's case, it is clear he's had sort of a crisis of conscience with regards to Russia, the way that state behaves, and it's affected the relationship with his family as well, right? As he outlined. So, there's a lot going on with these players sometimes more than just the
humans
the physical and the developmental from a hockey perspective. Jeff, I can't believe we're nearly 20 minutes into this, and just now I'm getting to ask you about the officiating, but what do you make of the officiating in this series through 3 games?
Well, I mean, from a Canucks perspective, again, they've had more power plays than the Oilers have. And, did I like the non-call on McDavid the other night? I thought Quinn Hughes, captain, a star. Corey Perry broke his stick across his back with a cross-check. Evander Kane had a slew foot, and then the McDavid high stick, and Quinn can't get a call. So, I don't like that, because if McDavid's going to get to his, then I think it has to be some degree of a two-way street. But again, like the Darnell Nurse penalty in a really pivotal point of that hockey game, you got to let these guys play to a degree. So it feels like they're looking for calls at times. Just the mere fact, though, that, I sometimes wonder if the Oilers' power play works against them. The referees realize what an absolute nuclear deterrent it is. And the fact that 3 games into this thing, they've only had the 8 power plays, and I think one of them lasted 24 seconds because there was some overlap in game number 2. So, you have to rise above in playoff hockey. Like, you're not going to love every call. I think there've been some that have gone both ways here. Susie, it's a cross check to the face. Like, you can't have that, even if it's not McDavid. You can't, and that's not Carson Soucy's MO generally, but playoff hockey, it gets heated. The thing that drives me nuts, though, guys, is, and I pointed this out on Twitter, that Michael McCarron absolutely went bowling for Casey DeSmith in round 1. Like, that's a big man and a goaltender, and he made no attempt to avoid contact. There was a 2-minute penalty and a $2,000 fine the next day. Zadorov's cross-check, you see that in net front battles on every power play at both ends of the ice, and somehow that's $5,000. And then Sam Bennett's running around in another series, clocking guys with, absolute knockout punches, and nothing in the moment and nothing after the fact. Like, how can it ever make any sense? My head hurts trying to even contemplate what goes on there at NHL headquarters.
Gregory Campbell vehemently disagrees with you on that one, by the way. Gregory Campbell. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Not Coley.
But I do think
they're both involved in this equation.
That's the supplemental side. I think within the games here, the fact that the power plays have been 9-8 for the Canucks, 3 a night, essentially, that works in the Canucks' favor. Like, there hasn't been a night yet where the Oilers have had 5 or 6, and look out if they do. But for the most part, 5-on-5 is where the Canucks want it, and that's where it has been played primarily through 3 games of this series.
And it's been a lot of fun so far, and we look forward to more fun, and we look forward to more JPAT analysis, not to mention more Rink Wide Vancouvers after Game 4 on Tuesday. Thank you for this, Jeff. You have a wonderful day there in the Alberta capital, and we'll catch up with you later in the week.
A little less smoky today, which is good. When I landed on Saturday, this big
I heard
forest fire in northern BC, and I guess the wind's pushing it this way. It just seems too early in the calendar year for it, but it was choking here. They had a little bit of rain on Sunday, which I think tamped it down a bit. So, yes, I want to be able to see the sights of Edmonton. I want the view out of my hotel window. So the forest fire smoke wasn't helping in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Cheeky.
It's a lovely river valley. Really is.
I can't see it, but I hear.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.
Everybody knows about the overdose crisis, also known as the toxic drug crisis.
But what's less known is that the stigma around addiction makes it harder to ask for help.
And that's got to stop. Addiction is a complex health condition, not a choice.
Right, and that means people shouldn't have to face judgment at work or from their loved ones or fear the law.
But shame or stigma can cause a person to hide their drug use or use alone.
And we don't want that. People shouldn't be afraid to reach out.
There are supports available, and it helps to know where to start.
The government of BC is partnering with organizations like Sekeres Price to help extend this message throughout our province.
If you or someone you know is struggling, you can find supports and services near you at helpstartshere.gov.bc.ca. You can also watch powerful real-life stories of recovery on the Help Starts Here website. Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. GolfNorthlands.com.
Hey, you. No, not you. You. Are you an owner-operator? You have a fleet of trucks or cars? Well, CalPro Plus might be the dedicated tire program just for you.
Free program includes exclusive deals and savings, price match guarantee, flexible financing, and preferred pricing on everything you drive.
Also, you get a dedicated member support line. That means that you can get questions answered. Also, they'll source and recommend the right tire for you, your application, and your budget.
Cal Tire's network of 260 plus stores are here to help so you can focus on the road ahead. Sign up for free at calproplus.com. Our next guest chronicled hockey for the province for 45 years. He was a pioneer in sports talk in this community and the 2020 Elmer Ferguson Award winner, which comes with induction to the Hockey Hall of Fame. It is our great pleasure to welcome back to the program the one and only Mr. Tony Gallagher. Good to see you, old boy. How you doing?
That's great to be here, guys, especially with you two in this wonderful studio and kicking it around again. But I may miss some characters from the past like B-Mac and so on, Don Taylor and Mr. Dollarwall mentioning opponents, I suppose. But I am thrilled to be here, but I don't follow it as much as I used to. And but playoff time kind of gets the blood going.
I bet it does.
Yeah. He was not short of informed opinions when he walked in here.
No,
we started chit-chatting.
We had a great conversation. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I don't know. You guys baby me a little bit. I think give me the softballs,
No.
There's no cross checks to the face like Connor got. That's for sure.
Well, one of the reasons we've invited you on, Tony, is that your name has been invoked here.
It has indeed. I can't understand why Spec would bring me out of the ash heap of history the way he did and invoke my name. But it was funny. And upon reading his piece, the first thing I'd ask him is, Mark, how do you know that there are no conspiracies? Have you checked all the emails? Have you checked all the texts? Do you have any whistleblowers? Have you solicited any whistleblowers in your vast investigation into whether there's any conspiracy? The point is, everybody takes everything on faith in pro sport. And while there's corruption in business, there's corruption in politics, there's corruption in religion, there's corruption in the IOC and FIFA and every other conceivable sporting organization, not in the NHL. It's as pure and as white as the driven snow.
Well, I mean, you need only to look outside of the series to see maybe the hottest spot in all this with Gregory Campbell's Florida Panthers evading supplemental discipline for a sucker punch on Brad Marchand.
Don't even start about that. It brings back all those 211 memories.
Right.
And the outrageous conflict of interest that Mark wanted to just kiss off that 2011. And the reason that Vancouver fans don't remember that, the number of outrages that transpired in that series are too numerous to mention on this broadcast. The suspension to Aaron Rome, of course. I mean, I expect Mr. Soucy will get 4 games for his tap on the league's best player. Hardly. No one ever gets that kind of a suspension.
What do you think it'll be? Seriously?
I don't know. Who knows? I mean, can you possibly predict those things from that league? And that probably 1 game. Most suspensions are 1 game, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Aaron Rome seemed to be the one that they heard about the most, not only from this corner of the world, but I think from that point forward, they were like a little bit more reticent to dole out 4 or 5 game playoff suspensions.
Well, first of all, you get the guys play for nothing. So why are we suspending a guy when we're letting him have a holiday from his duties? But that's another matter altogether. It was an outrageous suspension. It was the pinnacle of Aaron Rome's career when he hit Nathan Horton there. And for being a nanosecond late on the hit, if he was that, I think had they exchanged uniforms, it would have been no call of any kind because it was a perfectly clean hit. But unfortunately, Nathan got hurt on that. And that really seemed to sink the Bruins at the time, except they rallied around the hit and so on. But, it was an outrageous suspension. And the things that surrounded that suspension, the fact that there was a compensation meeting for the new contract signed by Gary Bettman shortly after that incident, I think the following week. And the chairman of that compensation committee happened to be one Jeremy Jacobs. And so I think Mr. Bettman and all people surrounding him wanted a very cheery Mr. Jacobs going into that meeting. And so Aaron Rome gets 4 games, and his career was never the same.
Well,
went straight downhill.
And Tony, that your director of officiating had to recuse himself from that series because
only after public pressure did he
yes.
recuse himself. He should have recused the moment his son became involved in the league. He should have stepped away from that job. It was an outrageous conflict of interest.
I guess they didn't teach conflict of interest at Cornell or Mr. Bettman, or maybe he just missed that day. Or
he must have missed more than one day. I should
then his fill-in, Mike Murphy, going out and saying, "Oh yes, well I consulted Brian Burke before I went ahead and administered this," knowing full well that Burke and
a well-known enemy of all people in the New York office.
So if you're wondering why fans in Vancouver don't have the greatest faith or not the same level of faith in the National Hockey League, it's jurisprudence, adjudication, refereeing, as Mark Spector does. It's because of incidents
and
like
do
that.
You not just to remember? Do you not remember and love how Colin Campbell made a big show of stepping away from his position during the final after having already assigned the officials for the series, of course. But so, I mean, it was just laughable.
Of course, he's inventing hockey debt, as we learned from reading the emails in that one court filing.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, Tony, one of the reasons I was so pleased you received the Elmer Ferguson Award in 2020, my friend, is because I wasn't sure you were going to get it.
Oh, I was certain I wasn't.
And I wasn't sure you were going to get it, not because you didn't deserve it, but because you were a thorn in the side of the NHL, of the National Hockey League. You come from a school where you were an outsider looking in at the proceedings, and never forget that, as opposed to someone who becomes part of the industry.
Well, this is
when I survey the media landscape these days, I see a lot of people with the power of the pen and the power of the microphone who cut their lot by being inside the industry and protective of it, as opposed to on the outside doing the job of criticism, which is what I always learned.
An observation, yes.
Is what I always learned a journalist is supposed to do.
You were raised the same way, and that's why I loved you when you came out here, because you had exactly that approach, as did Jason Botchford, the late great, and why I became close to both, because that's the way it should be.
Yeah,
You're
I
supposed
mean-
to hold the powerful to account, not kiss their bottoms. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous.
You're supposed to unsettle the comfortable and comfort the unsettled. And when I look, and particularly when I look at one company in this country and its member journalists, you know, it's clear on a 12-year deal where you have won the rights away from others, that comes with some accommodation.
Oh, I would
of the
think
National
so.
Hockey
You know, I would think it would have to.
It's no surprise, guys. Rick Westhead's reporting is for one organization versus the other. You know, there's no way Sportsnet's doing the Rick Westhead reporting on all of that. Any number of those reports, if he's on Sportsnet, they're not allowing those stories.
I would think not. And but I've been surprised many, many times, but not in that way very often.
Yes.
I can assure you.
So that's off the ice. On the ice, I think we can all agree, hockey's a fast sport.
Very difficult.
Officiating it can be a tough thing to do.
No doubt.
And yet, some days it's just going to be human error that we can deal with. It happens. Some days it makes you wonder what they're thinking.
Yeah, it lends itself to having you scratch your head because everything is on the official to make a determination of what he's going to call, because everything's a penalty now. If you look at interactions between players, you can always find something, always.
Just a cross check every 5 seconds.
Yeah. And so what are you going to call? And so that is examined after every game. How many power plays did this team get? When did those power plays come? Did they come early or come after the game was over, when they don't matter and you're evening the score to make yourself look good? There's an art to officiating as well now, you know, and you can disguise any kind of bias you want to put into a match. And that's why I don't like to see gambling promoted on NHL games. I can't stand it because it's going to lend itself to corruption at some point. I can make that prediction without fear. And I don't know when or who it'll be. It could be long after I'm dead and buried, but it's going to happen. And I just don't think it's a good idea.
Well, it also brings in the subjectivity of data collection. We've been talking about the shots on goal and how inaccurate or arbitrary they seem to be.
You can see how inaccurate they are. They put it up on the screen.
They're at least I'll give them credit. They're auditing this shot clock. Is unbelievable. It gets to a certain
but the criteria of the audit seems very ambiguous. And a hit. What's a hit? What's a takeaway?
Well,
and those are all props now.
I know if they can't identify who took the shot, he doesn't get credit. And the goalie doesn't get credit either for the save. It's ridiculous. And that's why there are companies who go over game tapes and watch things very carefully from several different angles and make a lot of money fixing the stats and saying, these are the real stats, folks. Here, use these.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to get back to the Spector column because for me, first of all, what did you make of institutional surrender?
I'd like to know what it was, first of all. Institutional surrender. I would need the definition. I didn't know what to make of it. I was scratching my head and was willing to listen to you, Matt.
Well, one of the things, so when I think back on Roger Nielsen, I think back on a head coach who was supremely innovative, right? Captain Video. He brought video basically to the National Hockey League. And I also, and I've met him a few times, but I certainly didn't cover him as extensively as guys like yourself and Spector. But I also think of a guy who was known for his sort of light, dry wit. That this wasn't, the most gregarious guy, but had a terrific one-liner here and there. So, putting the towel on the stick in '82 against the Blackhawks and having his players follow it, to me, is almost a perfect encapsulation of Roger because it was innovative and there was a lot of wit there.
Yeah. I mean, what was really going on with Roger at the time was there was only about 3 or 4 minutes left in the game. I very little time left in the game. It was long over. The Hawks had won game 2. And he just wanted to get on with it. There was milling around, and his point was, for heaven's sakes, Bob Myers, start the game let's get it over with and get the hell out of here and get on to the next one. It's over. And all this milling around is going on. And he finally just hoisted the white flag. It's over. Get us out of here. I surrender. Get us out of here and get back to Vancouver for the next game. And that was the only point he was making, and it took off from there. And
because the fans, they were interpreted it as a moment of defiance,
sure,
right? Like the fans basically said, "No, not on our watch. We can protest too."
Sure.
And this market will be heard from. So, I mean, the number of things I thought Spector got wrong in the column. Number one, hey, at least somebody out there, some team out there, built the stature of Roger Neilson. And, let it be this one rather than say the way he was treated in Philadelphia by Bobby Clark. And then secondly, to me, it was never institutional surrender. It was that, look, we play out here in the Pacific time zone. We're not the franchise that everybody in the power structures of Toronto and New York stay up to watch late.
And that we have all these travel difficulties because we have to travel further than anybody else, go through customs every time we go to the States and come back the same way. All these inconveniences which hamper the franchise. And now that's the feeling the fan gets. And I think that was one thing that Botch really understood, the culture and the empathy of the fans and the I don't know, just the feelings out here are collective and they're shared by numerous people.
Well, the bottom line is it is a on the podium hockey market across this world, and it has not very often been treated as that sort of market. I agree with what Daniel Wagner said. Pass it to Bullis, that the Cal Power is a middle finger to the hockey establishment or a rallying cry for the underdog.
That's what it's become. Whatever the origin and a version of that was the origin. That's certainly what it's become, and that's why I think that statue exists. Is a show of defiance and a we will overcome sort of attitude.
Yeah, and plus there's a Chicago Cubs, Boston Red Sox things beginning to go along here too, because there's quite a number of years Vancouver's had a franchise with no success. It's well over 50 now, so and counting. So that plays into it. So
so do all the travails, whether it's the draft wheel snafu with Perot and Talon, right? Whether it's teams rushing to Central Registry to say, no, they can't draft this Pavel Bure guy and trying to keep him away from here. Whether it's Rome in the Stanley Cup final and the suspension, still the longest in the Stanley Cup final. Whether it's Roberto Luongo's cap recapture penalty, the only one or one of two administered by the National Hockey League. And which brings me to Kelly Sutherland and the performance in Game 2 from not just Kelly, but the entirety of that officiating crew that did Game 2, Tony. First of all, your thoughts on him officiating Vancouver games after all the history of 2011 and 2013, and then maybe a word or two on what you saw on Friday night.
Well, if this were the league that Mark Spector seems to think it is, no referee who lives in an NHL town would ever work a game involving that team. Period. Never mind Kelly Sutherland, never mind anyone else. They simply wouldn't work those games. It would make their life more difficult. I understand that. Kelly, I'm not trying to get you, away from all those home games because I like all these guys. I know them.
I don't think Kelly lives here anymore. At least
I was going to ask. That's where I'm out of date.
In 2011, 2013, we were told he had moved to Toronto. He no longer lives here.
Like Brad Lazarowicz and that used to live here and everything. He'd work a lot of games here in Vancouver, but a linesman, I guess, was not in such a crucial position, although they're certainly in crucial positions. But I just don't think that you should ever work a home game like that. And it's not that big a chore for the league to see to that. Never mind Kelly Sutherland or anyone else. But I mean, to particularly put him in that situation after what he has, after some of the travails he has been through here, was particularly bad judgment.
Well, speaking of defiance, the league always seems to operate of, I know it looks bad, but we're going to do it anyway
That's exactly
because we don't
Like-
think it should look bad.
Like Gary's,
So
you know,
we're
that's it.
going to assign him anyway because we don't believe that it's bad.
Right.
But everybody else thinks it looks bad. So
that's what they consistently miss is that, you know, in Gary's infatuation, you know, in never acknowledging a single problem with the league, like that's not a good enough reason. Colin Campbell's stubbornness, that's not a good enough reason. Kelly Sutherland's feelings, that's not a good enough reason. He has simply lost the trust of your customers in this market, and thus he should not be assigned to games involving this team. It's that simple. There's many other teams he can go off and officiate. And you know what? We heard Steve Kozari in Edmonton doesn't have the trust of Oilers fans. Fair enough. Do not assign him to Oilers games.
Yeah, there's numbers of people you can choose from. But I think Mr. Bettman and the people that surround him there see that and they say, you will take it because we ordain it. I mean, they're not stupid, those people back there. They're very clever. They see what's going on, but you will suffer it. You must take it. We are going to shove this down your throat.
Well, and Tony, do you think they love the circus? Like, do you think they think the circus is good for them? That,
yes,
you know, when
it's
you have
distracting.
Mhm.
It's distracting from the real problems of the league. Like revenue has been at a standstill right through COVID, right through the accelerated business process through COVID, coming out of it, and revenue is still such that the salary cap is now just beginning to go up to somewhere
you don't
where
get
it
NBA
should be,
TV
to
deals,
somewhere where it was around 2000.
Yeah.
You know, like when Kachuk and Forsberg were making the same money that Connor McDavid and Elias Patterson are making now.
Yeah.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's extraordinary how little the revenue has grown.
Mhm.
And yet Mr. Bettman and his people have presided over the entire process.
Before we let you go, we've seen a lot of passion with the Canucks back in the playoffs, with being allowed in the building, being allowed to congregate. The city of Vancouver proper has been a little bit chilly to public watch parties. They've now put one in a park away from urban landscape, lest things get out of control. But they're flooding into the streets at 72nd Road and Scott Road, 72nd and Scott Road. If this goes on, if the Canucks make it to the conference final and beyond, are you at all worried about how fans are going to react after a couple of riots?
Well, of course. I mean, you would hope that there's been some lessons learned and really very little to be gained from that. I would exhort them to remember how much video there is of everything, how good the quality is, and how facial recognition is coming on. You will be spotted. You will either be prosecuted or you will be persecuted when seeking employment by employers who will find this stuff on the dark web. So beware. Do not do it. They will find you.
Yeah. Good point.
You enjoying the city being back in the postseason? You enjoying the games?
Oh, very much so. I mean, they're tremendous. The games are worth watching at this point. It's a good thing this doesn't go on very much longer. In fact, it's already an arduous a battle for these players because it's so physical at this time of year that, and the old days used to be even worse because you had a lot of fights thrown in as well. And especially a lot of this after the game was over type of real cheap shots like we saw last night, but you don't see much of that nowadays in the games. And their bodies just couldn't put up with it because the speeds at which they're traveling now are significantly greater than they used to be with the older skates and the heavier equipment. So, and they're in much better shape. So it just couldn't go on much longer. It's to win the Stanley Cup is still an awesome achievement by all.
It seems like they are back in the old days. They by the Stanley Cup final, those two teams were battered and bruised. It seems like they're at that place like in the second round already, because of the mass and the speed and all that sort of stuff. There's less cheap stuff, as you said, but when it happens at such a faster rate. It feels like they're still taking it.
Think of the wives, their lives when the guys come home and normally they come breezing home. Let's go for a meal or something like that. And they're perfectly fine. They come back with ice packs everywhere and they can't get out of bed in the morning. And I'm telling you, the wives have to basically lever them out of bed and push them out to practice or push them out to the next game. I've talked to a couple of them and they say during the playoffs, it's just ridiculous. Nothing happens other than keeping this guy going back to the game.
Exactly.
You know?
Families make a lot of sacrifices for the pro
for
athlete, particularly at this time of year. Okay, last question here, Gallagher. Do you or have you ever worn a tinfoil hat?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Not afraid of the
no,
aliens.
I have not.
No.
But I'm welcome to try. I'll try one on, actually, after what you see. But,
Grady will need the video if you ever do try one on. So I asked that because in his piece, Spector said the 35 years he's been covering the National Hockey League, officiating comes up more in Vancouver press boxes than in other ones. I mean,
that may well be true.
You traveled extensively around the league.
It comes up everywhere. Comes up a tremendous amount in Philly. I know they're really obsessed with it in Philadelphia.
There's some stuff that happens in Philly especially
for
in the
a number
70s.
of reasons. Yeah. But ever since the Broad Street Bullies, it's been an ongoing discussion in Philadelphia. And of course, there's been huge stretches when the Flyers haven't done very well, and that's brought on a lot more of it. So I think Vancouver and Philly are very, very similar. So I think there'd be pretty much a tie there. And there'd be other markets that would have their own entry into the sweepstakes. But I think those two are pretty much even.
You know what other press boxes it comes up in? Everyone when it's inadequate. And I'll bet it was brought up at the Rogers Place press box.
Oh, yeah.
Last night in Edmonton as well.
I should expect so. There were a number of calls that even the guys in the Sportsnet were critical of, and rightfully so. I mean, they were literally unbelievable, but and that's life in the NHL.
And
now.
Talking before we hit record, Tony, we all thought the Canucks' first 7 games of the postseason, the 6 against Nashville, the first one against Edmonton, were pretty reasonably well officiated. There wasn't a whole lot
reason to bring it up
to pick apart there.
And I go even further. I'm on record with you guys just having chatted saying I think Vancouver has been a huge benefactor of all that has gone on this year from start to finish.
I remember you noting the number of power plays. That's right.
Early on, and all the like the face-off percentage wins in the offensive zone have been remarkable by Miller, and mostly, by Miller. I mean, he's been their best face-off guy, at least seems to me, and he's won all those crucial offensive zone and a lot of defensive zone face-offs. He's doing extremely well against Draisaitl in this series. Where is the puck being dropped? If it goes an inch or a quarter of an inch either way, it favors another guy. Yeah. It's amazing what the linesman can do to affect a game. But, excuse me, I have to adjust the tinfoil hat here.
I was just going to say,
but
Gallagher.
I am just saying it can be done. I'm not saying it is. It can be done. But I think if it has been done, it's been done in Vancouver's favor this year. And I don't think it's been done, but because Miller is fabulous in the circle. We all know
true.
That. So
you joined us around Christmas time, and he said, I can't believe all the power plays
Vancouver was
getting early in the season when they were really flying and scoring all those goals. So don't call him a homer. He sees it.
Elias Patterson was alive.
But exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Great to see you, my friend. Thank you for making the trip.
It's been fun.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.